The violet, it's not like the sky, it's deeper, velvety. Like if you could reach into a bruise and pull out pure presence. And then there's this emerald. It's not bright, not like anything I've ever seen. It shimmers, but not like light on water. More like light is the water. It feels like being held. And the sound, oh God, the sound. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. Not really. It's more like a vibration that starts in your bones and goes all the way out to your fingertips. A deep resonant hum. It's everywhere. It's in the violet, in the emerald, in me. It makes everything feel right. Like I finally found the place I was always supposed to be. There's this warmth too, not like a blanket or the sun. It's fluid, like being submerged in a perfectly heated river, but there's no river, just warmth. It's a feeling of belonging, pure, unadulterated belonging. It's so intense. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't a color I've ever seen. It was more like color as a feeling. Does that make sense? It's like every atom in me is singing. And for the first time, for the very first time in my life, I feel completely at peace. No worries, no regrets, just here. And then I was back, a slow breath in. So yeah, Elias Thorne, 58 years old, retired Marine welder. What that means is for a good chunk of my life, if it was metal and it was broken, I could fix it, or at least make it work well enough not to fall apart. I was good at it, real good. Loved the smell of the flux, the roar of the arc. It was honest work, hard work. My days now, well, they're a lot quieter. I wake up around 6, same time every day. Doesn't matter if I want to or not. Force of habit. Make coffee black, no sugar. Sit by the window, watch the light change. That's the ritual. And I'll tell you, most mornings, the thought that crosses my mind is something along the lines of, is this it? Is this all there is now? Just watching the world go by from a distance. Worry? Mostly about keeping the house from falling down around my ears. That and the damn squirrels getting into the attic again. The usual. I never believed in anything I couldn't touch, couldn't weld, couldn't see the sparks fly off. God, religion, all that mumbo jumbo. Just stories people told themselves. I didn't need it. I had my own two hands, my own mind. That was enough, more than enough. Never saw the point in praying. What was I going to ask for? A stronger weld? A faster payday? Life was what you made it, and I made mine. Built it, piece by piece. And that's the rub, isn't it? You build things, you think you're in control, but sometimes you build walls without even realizing it. My daughter, Sarah, she's a good kid, smart, always was. Had her own ideas, though. Wanted to be a musician. A damn musician. We had a fight, a bad one about that. Said some things I can't take back. And she just left. Took her music and her dreams and left me with my welding gear and my pride. Haven't spoken to her in, well, it's been a while. Too long. Just last week I was at the grocery store. Same damn aisle I always go to. Picked up a can of peas. Felt the label, a little worn from being handled. That's it. That's the big memory from the week before. A can of peas. Absolutely forgettable. Just another Tuesday. Just another day in the life of Elias Thorne, the man who didn't need anything but himself. Funny, isn't it? How the smallest things, the most insignificant moments end up being the backdrop for, well, for everything else. So, that's me, or that was me, before the violet, before the emerald, before I woke up in a place I can't explain but damn sure remember. Slight shift in tone, a subtle unease. Funny thing is, looking back, there were little glitches, like static on an old radio dial just before the music goes completely dead. I never paid them no mind. Thought I was just tired, you know. The days were getting shorter, the air was biting hard. You expect things to feel a little off. There was this one morning, maybe a week before. I was out for my walk down by the old pier. Fog was thick, real thick. Couldn't see 20 feet in front of my face. And then, for just a split second, I heard it. Not the foghorns, not the gulls. It was laughter. Sarah's laughter. Clear as a bell, echoing off the water. I stopped dead. Looked around, but there was nobody there. Just me and the gray. I shook my head. Just the wind playing tricks, I told myself. Or maybe I'm losing my marbles. God, I dismissed it so fast. It was her laugh, though. The one she used to do when she was a kid. A real belly laugh. And it just vanished. Poof, like it was never there. And then there was that radio. An old AM one I keep in the garage. Used it for the ball games sometimes. It's always worked fine. But a couple of days before, I flipped it on just to check the time. It was dead. No static, no hum, nothing. Just silence. Like somebody'd pulled the plug from the wall, even though it was plugged in. I tapped it, fiddled with the dial. Nada. I figured it had finally given up the ghost, just another old piece of junk finally breaking down. Seems a bit more than coincidence now, doesn't it? Did you have any sense, looking back, that something was coming? Not a clue. Not a whisper. That's the thing. You think you're in charge of your own life, right? You think you see what's coming. You got the plans, you got the tools, but you're just a guy in a workshop. And sometimes the blueprints are for something you can't even imagine. I just figured I was getting old, my body complaining a bit more, my old radio finally kicking the bucket. That's all it was to me. Just life. Just another day of Elias Thorne doing Elias Thorne things. Never once did I think, never once did I think about that shipyard. Not at all. Not that particular one. Seemed like just another place to pick up some scrap. That's it. Just a job. Slight shift in tone, a subtle unease. Funny thing is, looking back, there were little glitches, like static on an old radio dial just before the music goes completely dead. I never paid them no mind. Thought I was just tired, you know? The days were getting shorter, the air was biting hard. You expect things to feel a little off. There was this one morning, maybe a week before. I was out for my walk, down by the old pier. Fog was thick, real thick. Couldn't see 20 feet in front of my face. And then, for just a split second, I heard it. Not the foghorns, not the gulls. It was laughter. Sarah's laughter, clear as a bell, echoing off the water. I stopped dead, looked around, but there was nobody there. Just me and the gray. I shook my head. Just the wind playing tricks, I told myself. Or maybe I'm losing my marbles. God, I dismissed it so fast. It was her laugh, though, the one she used to do when she was a kid, a real belly laugh. And it just vanished. Poof, like it was never there. And then there was that radio, an old AM one I keep in the garage. Used it for the ball games sometimes. It's always worked fine. But a couple of days before, I flipped it on just to check the time. It was dead. No static, no hum, nothing. Just silence. Like somebody'd pulled the plug from the wall, even though it was plugged in. I tapped it, fiddled with the dial. Nada. I figured it had finally given up the ghost. Just another old piece of junk finally breaking down. Seems a bit more than coincidence now, doesn't it? Did you have any sense, looking back, that something was coming? Not a clue. Not a whisper. That's the thing. You think you're in charge of your own life, right? You think you see what's coming. You got the plans, you got the tools. But you're just a guy in a workshop, and sometimes the blueprints are for something you can't even imagine. I just figured I was getting old. My body complaining a bit more, my old radio finally kicking the bucket. That's all it was to me. Just life. Just another day of Elias Thorne doing Elias Thorne things. Never once did I think, never once did I think about that shipyard. Not at all. Not that particular one. Seemed like just another place to pick up some scrap. That's it. Just a job. Block 4, the death. Voice takes on a slightly more formal, measured tone, but the body memory is still there. A faint rasp as he recalls the pain. It was January 14th, 2023. A Saturday. Cold, biting winter morning. The kind where the fog settles in like a wet wool blanket, muffling everything. I was at that old, abandoned shipyard in Baltimore. You know, the one down by the docks, all rusted out and forgotten. I went there for the scrap. Had a side hustle, picking up bits and pieces, selling them off. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The air was sharp, smelled of brine and old metal, that metallic tang that gets in your teeth. You could hear the distant, mournful groan of the foghorns, the occasional cry of a gull, but mostly just the hiss of the wind. I was up on one of those old gantries, checking out a section of collapsed walkway. The metal was slick with condensation, and the frost was starting to cling to everything. I'd been up there maybe 10 minutes, just assessing, figuring out how I'd get it down safely. I was alone, of course. Always worked alone. Easier that way. Nobody to slow you down, nobody to complain. Then it happened. I was reaching for a particularly stubborn piece of rebar, bracing myself against a rusted beam when something gave. Not the beam, the floor. It just gave way, like stepping on air. The sound wasn't a crash, not at first. It was more of a groan, a tearing metal sound, and then I was falling. Falling through the fog, a sensation I'd felt 1,000 times before, but this time it was different. The air rushing past my ears wasn't just cold, it was screaming. And then came the heat. It wasn't just hot, it was incandescent. A searing, white-hot splash of molten metal, still from some old furnace or something, had been sitting, waiting, and it just cascaded onto my leg. It felt like my entire world ignited. The pain, God, the pain. It wasn't like a cut or a burn you can just pull away from. This was all-consuming. It was a liquid fire eating into bone, into flesh. It wasn't just on my skin, it felt like it was inside me, melting everything from the inside out. And in that instant, that white-hot agony, I knew. I understood, with a clarity that was more terrifying than the pain itself, that this was it. I was dying. The body, this tough, reliable shell I'd inhabited for nearly 6 decades, was failing. It was shutting down. The screaming in my ears, it started to fade, like a radio station losing its signal. The edges of my vision began to blur, the fog around me seeming to close in. Not with cold, but with something else. A strange calm, almost. A profound stillness descended, and then, just before everything went black, there was this fleeting sensation, like being plunged into warm water. A gentle warmth that spread through me, not chasing away the pain, but somehow apart from it. I don't know how long that lasted. The paramedics later told me the monitors went flat for exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. 4 minutes and 30 seconds of Elias Thorne being utterly, unequivocally dead. They said it was a miracle I survived. Funny word to use for what happened next, because in those 4.5 minutes, something shifted. The last thing my body registered, the absolute final sensation before consciousness, before me, winked out, was that fading hiss of the wind and that bizarre, inexplicable warmth. It wasn't a fade. It wasn't like drifting off to sleep or sinking into a warm bath. The pain, that white-hot inferno that had consumed my leg, my body, my entire consciousness, it didn't just stop. It was like someone took a giant pair of shears and cut the cord connecting me to that suffering. 1 second, agony beyond imagining. The next, nothing. It was so sudden, so complete, it felt like a deliberate act, a switch being flipped, but not a switch on any circuit I knew. This was bigger, more fundamental. Then the void. It wasn't black. Black is the absence of light. This was a different kind of absence. It was dark, yes, but it was also full, like a deep velvet curtain, so rich and dense you could almost feel its texture. And from that darkness, a warmth. Not the searing heat of molten metal, not even the comforting warmth of a fire. This was a pervasive, gentle luminescence. It was like being swaddled, like the entire universe had decided to give me a hug, a physical hug somehow. It wrapped around me, seeped into me, chased away, well, not the memory of pain, but the feeling of it. It was like the world had been scrubbed clean and I was being polished. And the colors. Oh man, the colors. They weren't just colors, they were experiences. A deep, velvety violet, so rich it felt like it was humming. And then this impossible, shimmering emerald. It wasn't bright, not like the sun or a lamp. It was soft, like moonlight filtered through stained glass, but somehow more substantial. It felt like a knowing, like the color itself held information. I don't have words for it, really. It's like trying to describe a scent to someone who's never smelled anything. There's just no earthly reference point. It was like the air itself had a flavor, and that flavor was the color violet. And the emerald, it tasted like peace. Does that make sense? Probably not. But that's the best I can do. And the sound, or the lack of it. There wasn't silence, not like in an empty room. This was a different kind of quiet, a profound, resonant hum that vibrated through my very being. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. It was a vibration I felt in my bones, in my soul, if you can believe that. It felt ancient, like the fundamental frequency of everything, and the temperature sensation. It was like being cradled in warm, flowing water. Not submerged, not swimming, just held, supported. Every molecule of me felt soothed, so utterly at peace. And the emotion, the one thing that just hit me like a ton of bricks, was pure, unadulterated belonging. I mean, belonging, like I'd finally come home, like I'd been searching for this my whole life, even when I didn't know I was looking. Elias Thorne, the atheist welder who trusted nobody but himself, finally felt like he belonged somewhere. It was overwhelming. And then this presence. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it speak in my ears. It was just there. And I knew. I knew who it was. It was Sarah, my daughter. Not how I remembered her, not the young woman I'd last seen in that bitter argument. This was her essence, her spirit. It felt like the core of her being. And the recognition wasn't visual, it was a feeling. It was a specific kind of warmth that radiated from her presence, a warmth that felt identical to the warmth of her laughter. You know, the way she used to laugh, that deep, unrestrained belly laugh that would make her shoulders shake, that exact feeling, that pure joy that was radiating from her. And it wasn't a judgment, it wasn't a scolding, it was just presence. And then the message. It wasn't words, it was knowing, like she was pouring it directly into my mind. Your daughter still carries your laughter in her heart, Elias. She didn't leave you, you pushed her away, and she misses you more than you know. It hit me like a physical blow. The years of anger, the stubborn pride, the stupid argument about her career, all of it just dissolved. I saw it then, with blinding clarity. I had been so damn sure of myself, so convinced I knew best, that I'd built walls instead of bridges. And Sarah, my own daughter, had been on the other side of those walls, just as hurt, just as confused, and just as much in need of me as I was, apparently, in need of her. I saw a moment, just a flash, of her as a teenager, standing in my workshop trying to show me something she'd built, her face alight with hope, and me just dismissing it. "That's not real work, Sarah," I'd probably grunted, and she just closed down. She retreated, and I let her. Then, another thought, another knowing, came flooding in. About that kid, that welder's apprentice I'd chewed out a few years back. The one who was always making mistakes, always needing a nudge. I'd called him lazy, incompetent, a disgrace to the trade. And suddenly, I knew. This kid, this clumsy kid, was now running safety inspections for the entire coast. That gruffness, that harshness I'd always prided myself on, it had somehow, in his case, lit a fire. It had taught him vigilance. It had made him determined to prove me wrong. And he had. He'd taken my negativity and transformed it into something positive, something important. It was humbling, utterly humbling. I'd spent my life thinking I was a hard ass, a man who got things done. But I hadn't seen the ripple effect. I hadn't seen how my actions, even the negative ones, had shaped lives. And then there was this flicker. A vision, not of my life as a whole, but just a single small moment. It was me, sitting in my armchair watching the news. And on the TV, there was a small segment about old analog radios, how they sometimes pick up strange signals, static, fragments of music. And I saw myself, for a second, reach out and turn the dial on my old AM radio in the garage. And for the first time, instead of just static, I heard her laugh. Faint, distorted, but undeniably Sarah's laugh. It was like the universe was trying to tell me something, sending me little messages through the ether. Signals, like a broken radio trying to tune in. The message was clear, though, not just about Sarah, but about everything, about connection, about how much we impact each other, even when we don't realize it, even when we think we're alone. I wasn't just Elias Thorne, the solitary welder. I was Elias Thorne, a knot in the fabric of life, connected to everything, to everyone. And I'd been so busy trying to be independent, trying to be self-sufficient, that I'd forgotten the most important thing. We're not meant to be islands. We're meant to be part of the current. And the current, it's warm and it's flowing and it's calling you home. And then it was like being sucked backward through a straw. A really, really unpleasant straw. All that warmth, that belonging, that impossibly soft luminescence, it just imploded. It was violent, like being yanked by my fingernails out of the most comfortable bed I'd ever known and tossed into a concrete ditch. There was no gentle transition, no gradual fading. It was a jolt, a wrench. And the first thing I felt before anything else was resistance, like fighting against an invisible tide, a tide that was pulling me away from where I'd just been. Did I want to go back? Hell no. Not for a second. I had found home. I had found peace. I had found a connection that made every solitary, hard-won moment of my life feel like a pointless detour. But there was a pull, a different kind of pull than the one that had brought me there. This one felt familiar. And in that moment, with the echoes of Sarah's laughter still resonating in that other realm, I felt a pang. Not for myself, not for my pride, but for her. The message. She misses you more than you know. And suddenly, the idea of leaving her alone again, of leaving that connection severed, felt wrong. Not morally wrong, but fundamentally incomplete. Like a sentence without a period. I didn't want to return, but the thought of her, of that potential reconciliation, it was a hook, a small, stubborn hook that snagged me in the gut. And then the body. Oh God, the body. It wasn't just heavy, it was crushing, like I was being buried alive. The air in my lungs felt thick, acrid. My limbs were lead weights, utterly unresponsive, and there was this bone-deep chill that seeped into me, a stark contrast to that pervasive warmth. It was like being plunged into ice water after basking in the sun. And the noise. Suddenly, everything was a roar. My own ragged breathing, the distant wail of sirens that I hadn't registered before, the frantic shouting of voices. It was a cacophony, an assault on senses that had just experienced pure harmony. My ears were ringing, not with a gentle hum, but with a sharp, piercing shriek. And the smell, the metallic tang of blood, the acrid smoke from the still burning debris, it was overwhelming. It was earth, unfiltered and brutal. My eyes fluttered open, and the first thing I saw was fluorescent lights. Harsh, sterile, buzzing fluorescent lights. They seemed impossibly bright, like miniature suns burning holes in my retinas. It was so jarring after the gentle luminescence. Everything looked flat, two-dimensional. The vibrant violet and emerald were gone, replaced by the sickly pale green of hospital sheets and the dull gray of linoleum floors. And then I heard it. A voice. Not the resonant hum of belonging, but a high-pitched, frantic sound. "Elias, Elias, can you hear me? Oh God, Elias!" It was a woman's voice, choked with tears. Familiar. Terribly familiar. I tried to turn my head, but my neck felt like it was bolted in place. My vision swam. And then I saw her face. It swam into focus, blurry at first, then sharp. Sarah. My Sarah. Her eyes, usually so bright and full of life, were red-rimmed and wide with a terror that mirrored the terror I'd felt moments before, the terror of losing something precious. Her hair was messy, and she looked worn, exhausted. But she was there, holding my hand, her fingers impossibly cold against mine. "Sarah?" My voice was a croak, raw and unused. It sounded alien to my own ears. "Dad! Oh, Dad, you're back! You're back!" She squeezed my hand, and a fresh wave of tears spilled down her cheeks. And then another voice, deeper, calmer. A paramedic. "Easy there, sir. You took a nasty fall. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt hollow. I looked around the room at the sterile equipment, the hurried movements of people in uniforms, and it hit me. The wrongness. The world I just left was unified, flowing, full of connection. This world was broken. It was filled with sharp edges, with distance. The people here were like isolated islands, each in their own bubble of thought and concern. The sheer weight of it all was suffocating. The sheer, unadulterated separation. It was like I'd been dropped into a world where everyone was shouting and no one was listening. And I, Elias Thorne, the man who'd always valued his solitude, felt utterly, desperately alone. It was so loud, so unbelievably loud, and I just wanted to go back to the hum. It wasn't just a quick in and out, you know? I was in that hospital for, felt like forever. Weeks, at least 3. Sarah was there, of course. Every single day, she'd bring me coffee, bad hospital coffee, but it was hers. She'd sit and read or just be there. Her mom showed up a couple of times, a real lukewarm performance. Felt like a duty visit, the kind you make when you're obligated. But Sarah, she was the anchor. My first real conversation, after they'd finally let me talk without a tube down my throat, it was with her. Just a whisper, really. "I'm sorry, kiddo." And she just squeezed my hand so hard I thought she was going to break it. Tears again. But this time they felt different. Not just fear, but relief, maybe. The weld on my leg, that was bad. Real bad. They did what they could, skin grafts, the whole 9 yards. But I wasn't Elias Thorne, tough guy anymore. Not entirely. They told me I wouldn't walk right again, not like before. And for a while, they were right. But here's the thing. That stubbornness, that refusal to quit I learned in the Marines, it's still there. Just applied differently. I remember one afternoon, the physical therapist was pushing me, saying I needed to be more aggressive with the rehab. I just looked at him, and then I pictured that hazy, glowing emerald light and that hum, and I said no, not aggressive, persistent. And I meant it. I did the exercises, every single one. Even when it felt like my leg was being ripped off again, but this time from the inside out. I didn't power through it with sheer willpower. I just kept going. Because I knew somehow that the other side wasn't about struggle, it was about flow. So I learned to flow, even with a busted leg. The hardest part, though, was trying to explain it to anyone. I tried to tell my doc, Dr. Ramirez, about the light, the feeling of belonging. He just nodded, scribbled something on his chart, and said, "Classic near-death phenomenon, Elias. Perfectly normal." Normal? He thought that feeling of being cradled in pure love, that profound sense of connection, was normal. It was like trying to describe a symphony to someone who's only ever heard a foghorn. Sarah, she listened. She always listened. But even she, there was a limit. I remember one night I was fiddling with my old shortwave radio, trying to find anything, any fragment of that hum, and a faint melody, just a few notes, drifted out. I tried to tell Sarah, my voice trembling. "You hear that? It's from there." She looked at me, her brow furrowed with concern, but there was a flicker of something else too, doubt. A gentle, loving doubt, but doubt nonetheless. "Dad," she said softly, "I think maybe you're just picking up an old broadcast, or maybe it's the static. Your leg's still healing, you're still recovering." She didn't believe me, not really. And that hurt. A different kind of hurt than the molten metal, but it stung all the same. It made me realize this was mine. This experience, this knowledge, this peace, it was a solitary journey, even with Sarah by my side. But the changes, they're real. You can't go through that and stay the same. I still wake up sometimes, and for a split second, I expect to feel that gentle luminescence, that warm water. And when I don't, there's a pang, a tiny, quiet ache. But it doesn't cripple me anymore. It just reminds me of what's possible. I found those old analog radios I used to love, and now they're my companions. Sometimes, when I'm just sitting there, quiet, a little burst of static will come through, and then, clear as day, a few notes of music, melodic, gentle, like a little hello. It's not a booming announcement, not a revelation. It's subtle. It's a whisper. And Sarah, we're good. It's not a movie ending, no big dramatic hug of forgiveness. It's slow. It's real. It's late-night phone calls. It's her bringing her little boy, my grandson, over for visits. He's got my eyes, apparently. And a laugh that, well, it's like a faint echo of something I heard in that violet glow. The other day, I was helping her move some old boxes, and she made a joke, something about how I used to be so grumpy, so quick to tell people off. And I just smiled. A genuine smile. Not a grimace, not a forced politeness, a real honest-to-God smile. And then I said, "You know, kiddo, sometimes being grumpy teaches people to pay attention. Like that kid, what's his name? Billy, the one who was always messing up the welds." She just looked at me, a slow grin spreading across her face. "Billy? You mean Benny? He's a safety inspector now, Dad, for half the coast." And we just stood there for a moment, with that understanding passing between us. I'm not that welder anymore, not entirely. I still appreciate a good, solid weld. But now, I appreciate the quiet hum too. I'm sitting on my porch, the afternoon sun warming my face. My leg aches a little, a dull throb. I pick up my old transistor radio, the one with the Bakelite casing. I don't turn it on, not yet. I just hold it, and I listen. To the wind in the oak trees, to the distant chirp of a bird, and then a faint, almost imperceptible ripple of static, followed by a single pure note. It hangs in the air for a second, then fades. I smile. Subscribe for more hero stories, new video every week.